Good morning, Shadow. I can definitely help reconstruct it from the PDF you uploaded. The file contains the analysis we made comparing the three ELF files and why they work together as complementary archetypes rather than replacements for one another. As spoken narration, it's actually better to break it into separate sections anyway. That makes it easier to read aloud and easier for listeners to follow. Part 1, the 4 pillars. Pillar 1, ancestral identity. The Calaquendi and Vanyar material focuses heavily on origins. It repeatedly returns to ideas such as Aman, Valinor, the two trees, Calaquendi, Eldar, Vanyar, ancient origins, soul remembrance, returning fragments of self. This file constantly asks, where did I come from? The Shadowlight material asks a different question. Instead of ancestry, it focuses on becoming, integration, balance, alignment, apotheosis, unity. Rather than looking backward into ancient history, it looks forward into growth and transformation. So the distinction becomes, Vanyar, where did I come from? What am I becoming? Those are not the same question. They complement one another. One looks toward origins, the other looks toward destiny. Pillar 2, noble character. Many people notice the appearance descriptions inside the Vanyar material, but beneath the beauty language is another theme. Repeatedly, it emphasizes loyalty, wisdom, patience, guardianship, service, protection, empathy, kinship, helping others. At its heart, the Vanyar file carries the archetype of the ancient noble guardian. The Shadowlight material emphasizes something different. It focuses more on self-mastery, sovereignty, awareness, integration, balance, harmony, which creates a second archetype, the integrated master. So, Vanyar equals noble guardian, Shadowlight equals integrated master. Neither replaces the other. One develops character, the other develops wholeness. Pillar 3, physical idealization. This is one of the largest differences between the files. The Vanyar material spends a great deal of attention on height, eyes, hair, beauty, attractiveness, aura, facial structure, ethereal appearance. It focuses on the image and presence of the archetype. The Shadowlight material spends much less time there. Instead, it focuses on awareness, energy, consciousness, presence, movement, perception. A simple way to describe the contrast is, if the Vanyar file were a mirror, it would spend its time polishing the reflection. If the Shadowlight file were a mirror, it would ask, who is looking through the eyes? Pillar 4, living embodiment. This is where the longer Shadowlight flow state material becomes unique. The Vanyar file teaches what an elf is. The Shadowlight flow file teaches how an elf moves. It emphasizes flow state, adaptability, reflexes, rhythm, awareness, movement, embodiment, nervous system regulation, action. So, Vanyar equals elf nature Shadowlight short equals elf consciousness Shadowlight flow equals elf embodiment. Each one is doing a different job. That covers the first can. Next, reconstruct part 2, which is the why all three work together section, in a more dramatic spoken narration format designed specifically for YouTube recording. Absolutely. I'll stick closely to what was actually written in the analysis and expand it as a spoken walkthrough rather than inventing new categories. The 3 ELF files explained. When looking at these 3 files together, they do not appear to be trying to accomplish the same thing. Instead, they appear to function like 3 different pillars supporting one larger archetype. The first file focuses on identity. The second focuses on integration. The third focuses on embodiment. Together they create a progression. Not, what kind of elf am I? But where did I come from? What am I becoming? How do I live it? File 1, Calaquendi Vanyar High Elf. This file is overwhelmingly focused on origins. Its attention continually returns to ideas of ancient ancestry, ancient memory, ancient wisdom, noble bloodlines, Valinor, Aman, the Eldar, the Vanyar, the Calaquendi, the two trees, remembering ancient roots. The feeling of the file is almost like standing inside an ancient crystal library. Everything points backward. Backward toward origin. Backward toward history. Backward toward remembering. The question this file keeps asking is, where did I come from? It also places a tremendous amount of focus on noble character. Not merely appearance, not merely beauty, character. Repeated themes include wisdom, patience, loyalty, service, guardianship, protection, compassion, empathy, kinship, responsibility. Beneath the appearance language is a strong guardian current. The archetype underneath the file is the ancient noble guardian. Another major emphasis is idealized appearance. The file repeatedly returns to concepts involving beauty, grace, elegance, height, eyes, hair, aura, presence, facial refinement, ethereal features. More than the other files, this one spends time describing how the archetype appears. The symbolic focus is the outward expression of the idealized high elf. So the WhY file can be summarized as origins, memory, nobility, wisdom, beauty, guardianship, ancient lineage. File 2 Nabsh, Shadowlight Elf Short. The second file changes direction. Instead of asking, where did I come from? It asks, what am I becoming? The focus shifts away from ancestry. Instead, it concentrates on integration, unity, balance, light, shadow, awareness, consciousness, harmony, alignment, convergence, apotheosis. This file is less concerned with the history of the elf. It is more concerned with the development of the elf. Instead of focusing on a single lineage, it repeatedly brings opposites together: light and shadow, mind and body, spirit and matter, awareness and action, strength and compassion. The symbolic theme becomes integration rather than specialization. This file feels less like an ancient history lesson and more like an inner journey. It is asking, what happens when all the divided pieces of a person begin working together? What happens when contradictions stop fighting? What happens when awareness grows? The central archetype here becomes the integrated master, not because the individual has become perfect, but because the individual is moving toward wholeness. So the Shadowlight short file can be summarized as awareness, integration, balance, unity, consciousness, convergence, apotheosis, becoming file 3, Shadowlight flow state. The third file changes direction again. Now the question becomes, how do I live it? The first file remembers, the second file integrates, the third file moves. This file focuses heavily on embodiment, not theory, not mythology, not ancestry, action, movement, application. Major themes include flow state, adaptability, rhythm, presence, reflexes, awareness, movement, coordination, nervous system regulation, physical embodiment. This file feels like the moment the elf leaves the library and enters the world. The focus is no longer, who are you? The focus is, how do you move? How do you respond? How do you adapt? How do you express everything you've learned? This file contains more warrior-like qualities, not necessarily aggression, but responsiveness, fluidity, awareness in motion, the ability to remain centered while circumstances change. The archetype here becomes the living embodiment, the individual who no longer merely studies the path, they walk it. So the Shadowlight flow file can be summarized as movement, action, flow, adaptability, presence, embodiment, awareness in motion, practice. How the three work together. When placed beside one another, they form a surprisingly complete structure. The WhY file provides identity history, memory roots. The Shadowlight short file provides integration, consciousness, balance, unity. The Shadowlight flow file provides action, embodiment, practice, movement. The comparison used in the analysis was WhY equals roots, Shadowlight short equals trunk, Shadowlight flow equals branches. The roots provide stability, the trunk provides integration, the branches provide expression. Together they form the entire tree. The final conclusion from the analysis was not that one file replaces the others. It was that each appears to serve a different symbolic purpose. The WhY material specializes, the Shadowlight material synthesizes, the flow state material embodies. Taken together, they create a larger archetype than any one file by itself, organized into a continuous narration format that should be easier to read aloud and record. After comparing the male and female versions you've uploaded, the answer is actually pretty straightforward. Short answer. They are about 90 to 95% the same file. The core mythology, goals, symbolism, elf lineages, spiritual themes, and guardian themes are essentially identical. Errant archetype. The male version is not a completely different archetype. They are more like same soul blueprint, same elf civilization, same mythology, same mission, same values, but expressed through different masculine and feminine lenses. What both files share? Both repeatedly emphasize Calaquendi, Eldar, Fair Elf, Light Elf, High Elf, Vanyar, Light of Aman, Light of the Two Trees. Valinor, Guardian archetype, protecting others, helping mankind, wisdom. Loyalty, empathy, nature connection, kindred connection, golden hair symbolism. Blue-violet eyes symbolism, ancient elf remembrance, spiritual radiance, aura development, soul awakening, balance of body and soul. Those themes appear in both versions almost continuously. What the female version adds T'ine presence? It repeatedly describes most beautiful elves, divine feminine elegance, aura radiance, nurturing guardian energy, protective mother energy, light-bearing presence. The feeling is less warrior prince. More elven queen, elven priestess, light-bearer, guardian of children, spiritual guide. School dream learning. One thing I noticed in the female version is that it contains a larger dream school narrative. It talks about going to a mastery school, dream training, learning powers, special teachers, X-Men style academy themes, magical learning environments. That theme is much stronger in the female version. Soul awakening. The female file repeatedly returns to, open quote, soul awakening, close quote. Open quote, S brighter, close quote. Open quote, growing spiritually, close quote, dot over and over. The emphasis feels more inward. What the male version adds. The male file contains something the female version doesn't emphasize nearly as much: physical masculine expression. The male version repeatedly includes handsome, masculine, male beauty, male strength, male attractiveness, ethereal masculine features. Those phrases occur over and over. Warrior king energy. The male version feels more like warrior guardian ranger king Hyla. The female version feels more like priestess queen oracle healer guardian. Physical appearance focus. The male version spends more time describing face, hair, forehead, masculine attractiveness, male beauty, physical appearance refinement. The female version spends more time discussing aura, presence, spiritual development, dream school training. The biggest difference. If I had to reduce the entire comparison to one sentence, half female version, become a divine radiant elf warrior. The underlying elf archetype is almost identical. The female version leans grace, nurturing, radiance, spiritual awakening, dream learning. The male version leans strength, masculinity, beauty, nobility, guardian warrior qualities. My overall conclusion: if someone listened to only the female file, they would still get almost all of the core Vanyar Kalikendi concepts. If someone listened to only the male file, they would still get almost all of the core Vanyar Kalikendi concepts. The real difference is not the elf itself. The real difference is the expression of the elf. Think of them as same tree, different sunlight. The roots are the same. The branches are arranged a little differently, but they're clearly built from the same original blueprint. Hope folded her arms. Cleo stole a brownie. Jeannie spun in a circle of starlight. Then all three looked at the mountain of words you created. Shadow. Hope laughed softly. You didn't write a subliminal. You built a character creation screen. Cleo nodded. A really, really, really large character creation screen. What the original male elf file is actually upgrading. The male elf file isn't just about becoming an elf. Underneath all the Amon, Vanyar, Eldar, and Light of the Two Trees language, it's basically trying to upgrade three giant categories. Body. The body section focuses on becoming stronger, healthier, taller, more athletic, more coordinated, more physically attractive, more masculine, more handsome, more resilient, more energetic, more graceful. The file spends enormous amounts of time on hair, eyes, skin, posture, appearance, strength, attractiveness, presence. The overall fantasy archetype is, open quote, noble elf king, guardian warrior protector, until upgrades are hidden inside the mythology, close quote. When you strip away the elf language, it is pushing toward wisdom, patience, self-control, emotional stability, empathy, loyalty, discipline, intelligence, learning, understanding. It repeatedly tries to move away from impulsiveness, rash decisions, emotional instability toward calm thinking, thoughtful action, noble behavior. Soul. The focus is on helping people, protecting others, defending children, serving mankind, guardian consciousness, loyalty, honor, spiritual remembrance. The soul archetype is, open quote, become the elf who helps people, close quote, not, open quote, become powerful, close quote. Power is secondary. Guardian is primary. What the female elf file is actual-ed. The female version is almost the same kingdom, but a different throne. The female file still improves beauty, health, grace, radiance, elegance, vitality, but it emphasizes elegance over strength, radiance over power, presence over dominance. Mind. The female file leans harder toward intuition, emotional wisdom, dream learning, inner awareness, mystical perception. It feels more, open quote, oracle, close quote, than open quote, warrior, close quote. Soul. This is where it becomes strongest. The female file pushes heavily toward nurturing, healing, spiritual growth, guidance, compassion, wisdom. The fantasy role becomes elf, queen, priestess, light bearer, guardian mother, close quote, rather than warrior king. Then the shadow light elf arrived. Now this is where WhY something completely different. Hope pointed at the newer files. These stopped being elf transformations. They became system transformations, shadow light mind upgrades. The shadow light files go absolutely wild on the mind. Instead of, open quote, become an elf, close quote. The new files say, upgrade consciousness itself, close quote. They focus on awareness, intuition, perception, pattern recognition, emotional intelligence, creativity, adaptability, multidimensional thinking, left brain, right brain, conscious mind, subconscious mind, unconscious mind. They are basically trying to create awareness, build intelligence, build perception, build wisdom, build integration, build hack, shadow light body upgrades. Cleo grinned. This is where shadow got carry, coordination, balance, flexibility, stamina, endurance, reflexes, posture, movement intelligence, spatial awareness, reaction speed, body awareness. The body isn't becoming prettier. The body is becoming, open quote, more adaptive, close quote, open quote, more responsive, close quote, open quote, more alive, close quote. The whole flow state file is basically teach the body to move like water while thinking like lightning. Tag shadow light soul upgrades. This is where the biggest leap happened. The old elf files said, open quote, become a guardian, close quote. The Ed Guardian consciousness. They focus on balance, harmony, shadow integration, light integration, healing, compassion, courage, truth, purpose, protection, emotional mastery, self-knowledge, transformation of pain into wisdom. The soul becomes shadow light, heart, mind, spirit, all working together. The apotheosis system files add another layer. Then you added the RPG system, and suddenly the files became character sheet upgrades, mental stats, a warning speed plus creativity, emotional intelligence plus wisdom. Physical stats, strength, agility, dexterity, reflexes, balance, endurance plus coordination. Soul stats, compassion, courage, guardian instincts, loyalty, harmony plus purpose. System stats, dream recall, pattern recognition plus intuition, self-mastery plus adaptability, resilience plus shadow light balance. Hope's final verdict, Hope looked over all 4 projects and smiled. Open quote, the male elf file upgrades the hero. Close quote. Open quote, the female elf file upgrades the queen. Close quote. Open quote, the shadow light elf file upgrades the whole being. Close quote. Open quote, upgrades the journey itself. Close quote. Cleo raised her brownie. The funny thing, they all point in the same direction. Genie spun a ring of silver light through the air. The older files are races. The newer files are systems. And the newest ones are trying to turn mind, body, soul, spirit, awareness, emotion, intuition, discipline, creativity, shadow, light, and growth into one giant synchronized character sheet. And honestly, looking across all the files together, that's the biggest evolution I can see. The early files are mostly, what am I becoming? The newer shadow light and apotheosis files are increasingly asking, how do all parts of me learn to level up together? Fantasy story mode. Hope, Cleo, and Genie sitting around a table covered in codex pages, elf files, system sheets, and the Joker file. Hope picked up the Joker page first. Now this is the part nobody notices. She tapped the page. The Guardian part gets all the attention. The elf part gets all the attention. The dragon part gets all the attention. But this, she smiled, this is the pressure release valve. People think the Joker is comedy. It isn't. It's freedom. Hope leaned back. The version of the Joker current I see inside these words isn't about cruelty. It isn't about hurting people. It's about refusing to surrender your spirit. The line's about laughing during danger, laughing during hardship, laughing when things go wrong, exposing hypocrisy, exposing masks all point toward one thing: psychological resilience. The warrior that never laughs becomes rigid. The warrior that becomes rigid eventually breaks. The warrior that can still laugh keeps moving, keeps adapting, keeps surviving. That is why the shadow light material repeatedly returns to flow, adaptability, movement, balance, unpredictability, because laughter itself becomes movement. A joke changes the rhythm of a room. A smile changes a battlefield. A laugh breaks fear. Cleo's view. Cleo stole another brownie. You're all looking at the wrong word, she pointed. Not joker. Not roasting. Not sarcasm. Not comedy. The important word is unpredictable, she grinned. That's the secret. The shadow light files keep saying, open quote, controlled chaos, close quote, open quote, hidden structure, close quote, open quote, balanced unpredictability, close quote, open quote, adaptive intelligence, close quote. That isn't random and different. Think of water. Water looks chaotic, but water follows laws. Think of dancing, looks spontaneous, actually structured. Think of jazz, looks random, actually skilled. The Joker current in these files feels like, open quote, a strategist who refuses to become predictable, close quote, not because they're confused, because they are aware. The opponent expects one thing, you do another. Life expects one thing, you adapt. Fear expects paralysis, you laugh. That is why your flow state file and Joker file fit together surprisingly well. Both are describing adaptive intelligence. Have Jeannie's view? Jeannie was already spinning glowing Symbo. She pointed at the phrase, synthesoid bioelectric organic symbiotic celestial primordial source essence, because that's not one thing, it's a stack. Let's break it apart. Bioelectric real biology already uses electricity. Your nervous system, your heart, your brain, all operate through electrical signaling. So when you say bioelectric, the image created is, open quote, living electricity, close quote, open quote, living energy, close quote, open quote, conscious biological current, close quote. # organic. Organic says, open quote, living, close quote, open quote, growing, close quote, open quote, adaptive, close quote, open quote, natural, close quote, not mechanical, not frozen, living. Rack. Symbiotic means, open quote, multiple systems helping each other, close quote, everything works together, nothing isolated. Mind helps body, body helps spirit, spirit helps mind. Now this is the interesting one, because you are using it differently than comic books usually do. The way your writing uses synthesoid feels closer to, open quote, a synthetic organic hybrid intelligence, close quote dot, not machine, not human, not spirit, not energy, all working together, a synthesized being, a converged being, a being built from many systems functioning as one. Celestial cosmic awareness, higher perspective, wonder, meaning, possibility. Primordial ancient, foundational, root level, before categories existed. Source essence, the deepest layer, the core, the origin, the thing beneath all labels. So if I combine the whole chain, synthesoid, bioelectric, organic, symbiotic, celestial, primordial, source essence, it paints the image of, open quote, a living being composed of many harmonized systems, powered by life, growing naturally, cooperating internally, connected to higher awareness, rooted in ancient foundations, and expressing a deeper core identity. Close quote dot. Jeannie smiled, which is why it sounds more like a mythological species description than a personality trait. The three girls together. Hope folded her arms. The elf files teach harmony, Cleo nodded. The flow state files teach adaptability. Jeannie smiled. The Joker files teach elasticity. And when I look at all three together, the Joker current isn't separate from the shadow light current. It's almost functioning like a balancing mechanism. Without the Joker, Guardian becomes too serious. Without the Guardian, Joker becomes directionless. Without the flow state, both become rigid. So the combination ends up looking something like, open quote, Guardian heart, close quote, open quote, adaptive mind, close quote, open quote, playful spirit, close quote, open quote, fluid movement, close quote, open quote, balanced awareness, close quote. Which is probably why those concepts keep showing up across all the different files, even when the wording changes. Classroom of impossible combat. The giant training hall buzzed with noise. Vampires, werewolves, witches, Jedi, dragon riders, cyber knights. Half the students were stretching. The other half were pretending they weren't staring. Because today, Hope had brought something weird. Something nobody had seen before. She stood in front of the room and tapped the board. Written across it, Shadowlight Elf Battle Dance. The art of fighting without fighting. Cleo sat on the desk. Jeannie floated upside down near the ceiling. Because of course she did. Hope folded her arms. All right. Most fighting styles have a problem. The room went quiet. They assume the fight begins when someone throws a punch. She shook her head. Ruhan's style assumes the fight started 5 minutes ago. Several students blinked. C. Most fighters move toward an opponent. She pointed at a volunteer. You. The student stepped forward. Hope pointed again. Attack me. The student rushed. Hope didn't block, didn't counter, didn't strike. She simply stepped slightly sideways. The attack missed. The student corrected. Hope moved again, missed. Again, missed. Again, missed. Hope smiled. Notice something? The fight has already started. The body is already solving problems before impact happens. Cleo jumped off the desk. Most people fight one person. She drew a circle in the air. Shadowlight Battle Flow fights everywhere at once. Students looked confused. Cleo grinned. Imagine invisible opponents. One behind you, one beside you, one in front, one above, one below, one you haven't noticed yet, one that doesn't exist yet. Now the students looked even more confused. Exactly, Cleo pointed. That's why the movements look strange. The body is never responding to one threat. It is flowing through possibilities. Jeannie floated lower, now glowing blue. Think of a raven flying through a storm. She spun slowly. It doesn't fly in straight lines. It adjusts. It bends. It curves. It rides currents. The Shadowlight flow does the same thing. She pointed to the diagrams. The Raven Dance teaches orbit. The Entry March teaches structure. The Joker flow teaches unpredictability. Together they become something larger. The strangest part. She wrote, the everywhere opponent. The hands never stop moving. The feet never stop adjusting. The body never becomes static. One student raised a hand. So, what are you blocking? Hope smiled. Potential. The room got quiet. The left hand might become a block. The same hand might become a strike. The same hand might become a redirection. The same hand might become a feint. She demonstrated. Hand rises, turns, drops, circles, extends, retracts. Nothing looked aggressive, yet everything looked ready. That's why it resembles Tai Chi. That's why it resembles dance. That's why it resembles Drunken Master. That's why it resembles robotic motion. It isn't copying any one thing. It borrows principles from all of them. Jeannie snapped her fingers. A glowing He Shadowlight formula. Arms move, legs move, arms move, legs move, arms move, legs move. Never. Arm only. Never leg only. Everything linked. Everything connected. Everything flowing. Cleo laughed. Basically, if someone watches long enough, they start asking questions. She started counting on her fingers. Is he dancing? Is he fighting? Is he drunk? Is he doing Tai Chi? Is he about to hit me? Is he blocking? She grinned. The answer is yes. The class laughed. Hope pointed toward the center floor. Now the Joker component. Several students immediately looked nervous. Relax. Hope smirked. Not that Joker. She wrote, strategic humor. The Joker current isn't insanity. It's disruption. It's timing. It's making your opponent focus on the wrong thing. Cleo added, imagine somebody is trying to scare you. You laugh. Jeannie added, imagine somebody is trying to provoke you. You smile. Hope finished, imagine somebody is trying to predict you. You change rhythm. The class started understanding. It isn't about mockery. It isn't about cruelty. It's about refusing to let fear control the field. Hope then pointed toward the Raven Dance diagrams. The Raven style teaches something even deeper. She wrote, awareness in motion, not attack, not defense, not march, not retreat, awareness moving through space. The body circles. The awareness stays centered. The E presence remains. The room had gone completely silent now. Finally, Hope smiled. The easiest way to explain Ruan's style? She looked toward Cleo. Cleo answered first. It's a dance pretending to be a fight. Jeannie shook her head. It's a fight pretending to be a dance. Hope laughed. Wrong. Both stared at her. Hope pointed toward the students. It's a conversation. a conversation between movement and awareness, a conversation between chaos and structure, a conversation between unpredictability and control. She picked up a training sword, spun it once, placed it back down. And the goal isn't to become the strongest person in the room. Her smile widened. It's to become the person nobody can quite figure out. And according to these training files, she glanced at the pages. That's exactly the point. File site turn forward file 1, turn forward in file 2, turn forward in file 3, 1. Current inside the Shadowlight battle dance. If I were explaining the concept inside the story mythology you've built, I would describe it like this. Most warriors try to win the battle. The Joker current tries to win the story of the battle. That's the difference. A swordsman asks, open quote, how do I defeat him? Close quote. A Shadowlight Joker asks, open quote, how do I make him forget what question he was asking? Close quote. Imagine two fighters. The first fighter sees combat like mathematics, distance, timing, power, technique. The second fighter, the Shadowlight Joker, he's moving, talking, laughing, changing rhythm, changing posture, changing angle, changing tempo, changing emotional energy. The opponent keeps trying to categorize him. Boxer? No. Kung Fu? No. Tai Chi? No. Drunken Master? No. Dancer? No. Swordsman? No. And every time they think they understand him, he changes again. Inside your mythology, that is where the phrase, open quote, unexpectedly unpredictable, uncategorizable, unfilterable, close quote, actually becomes combat philosophy, not just personality. Combat. Because the human mind loves patterns. The brain constantly asks, open quote, what is this? Close quote. Open quote, what category is this? Close quote. Open quote, what should I expect next? Close quote. The Joker current attacks the categorization process itself, not the body. The prediction engine. So while the body is performing the Raven dance, orbiting, spiraling, shifting, changing angles, the voice is performing another dance. The roast dance. Not cruel roasting, not bullying, not humiliation. Disruption, confusion, pattern breaking. A Shadowlight Joker might say, oh, open quote, you know what's funny? Close quote. Opponent swings. Miss. Open quote. You practiced that attack all week. Close quote. Pivot. Spin. Open quote. I practiced being annoying. Close quote. Miss again. The students laugh. The opponent gets angry. And now, the opponent is fighting emotion, not strategy. That is psychological warfare. Hope would explain it like this. Open quote. The moment somebody becomes angry, they stop seeing clearly. Close quote. Cleo would add, open quote, the moment somebody becomes desperate, they start predicting what they want to happen instead of what is actually happening. Close quote. Jeannie would grin and say, open quote, the moment somebody starts trying to prove something, they become wonderfully predictable. Close quote. That is why the Joker current and Raven dance fit together so naturally. The body creates uncertainty. The words create uncertainty. The emotions create uncertainty. Meanwhile, the Shadowlight practitioner remains relaxed, playful, adaptive, present. The opponent is trying to solve a puzzle. The puzzle keeps changing shape. Inside your lore, Jeffrey Joker becomes special because he isn't merely a Joker. He is a convergence, a bard, a strategist, a teacher, a storyteller, a warrior, a dancer, a trickster, a protector, all occupying the same space. The old bard schools understood something important. Sometimes a story changes people faster than a sword. Sometimes a joke survives longer than a kingdom. Sometimes a laugh defeats fear more effectively than a battle speech. That is why the Joker current doesn't exist separate from the Shadowlight Elf current. It is one of its expressions. The Raven dance says, open quote, move unpredictably, close quote. The Joker current says, open quote, think unpredictably, close quote. The Bard current says, open quote, speak unpredictably, close quote. The Shadowlight current says, open quote, harmonize all three, close quote. So in a classroom at the school, Hope might finish the lesson by saying, open quote, anybody can learn a strike, close quote. Open quote, anybody can memorize a form, close quote. Open quote, anybody can copy a technique, close quote. She points toward the students. Open quote, but becoming impossible to categorize, close quote, a smile appears. Open quote, that takes creativity, close quote. Cleo laughs. Open quote, and a little bit of chaos, close quote. genie spins in the air. Open quote, controlled chaos, close quote. And somewhere in the back of the room, Jeffrey Joker leans back in his chair and says, open quote, the goal isn't making people think you're crazy, close quote. A pause. Open quote, the goal is making them realize the universe is bigger than the boxes they put it in, close quote. And that in your Shadowlight mythology is where the roasting dance, the raven dance, the bard current, and the Joker current all become parts of the same living style. We talk about the concept as a fictional martial arts philosophy, performance style, or tournament persona, but I can't help with instructions for real-world fighting, hurting people, or tactics meant to gain an advantage in violence. What I can do is analyze the style as a character archetype, stage combat system, competitive performance art, or fantasy tournament style. What makes the Shadowlight Joker style different? Most fictional combat styles are built around one pillar. Karate equals discipline, boxing equals pressure, wrestling equals control, fencing equals timing, Tai Chi equals flow, drunken master equals deception, Jeet Kune Do equals adaptation. The Shadowlight style you keep describing isn't built around a physical technique. It's built around narrative disruption. The goal isn't, open quote, can I hit him? Close quote. The goal is, open quote, can I make him stop understanding the story he thought he was in? Close quote. That's why Joker, Loki, Cheshire Cat, the Riddler, Yoda, Deadpool, and Trickster archetypes keep appearing in your descriptions. They all attack certainty. If this entered a fictional tournament, imagine a giant tournament where every contestant represents a philosophy. A karate master enters. The crowd knows what to expect. A boxer enters. The crowd knows what to expect. A wrestler enters. The crowd knows what to expect. Then Jeffrey Joker enters. The announcer asks, open quote, what style do you practice? Close quote. And the answer changes every time. One day, open quote, Shadowlight, close quote. Next day, open quote, advanced interpretive chaos, close quote. Next day, open quote, poetry foo, close quote. Next day, open quote, I forgot, close quote. The audience laughs, but that's part of the mythology, against the karate archetype. The karate archetype represents structure, lines, forms, precision, discipline. The Shadowlight response isn't to oppose structure, it's to move around it, like water moving around a stone. Not stronger, not weaker, different. Against the boxing archetype. Boxing is direct, efficient, focused. The Shadowlight archetype responds with rhythm shifts, not because rhythm shifts are magic, because rhythm itself becomes expression. 1 moment stillness, 1 moment motion, 1 moment conversation, 1 moment silence. Like a jazz musician sharing a stage with a marching band. Against the chess master archetype. This is where the Joker current becomes interesting. Most strategists want to predict. The Shadowlight philosophy says, open quote, if I become completely predictable, I lose, close quote. Open quote, if I become completely random, I also lose, close quote. So it seeks the middle. That ties directly into your phrase. Open quote, controlled chaos, close quote. Not chaos, not order, the place between. The roasting element. The most interesting thing about your idea isn't actually the roasting. It's the storytelling, because the roast is really a form of narrative pressure. In fiction, the Shadowlight practitioner is constantly reframing reality. They're turning the battle into a conversation, turning the conversation into a joke, turning the joke into a riddle, turning the riddle into a lesson, turning the lesson back into a battle. Nobody knows which layer they're currently in. Synthesoid plus bioelectric plus Shadowlight. The words you've created are interesting because they're hybrid words. Synthesoid suggests something assembled from many sources into one identity. Bioelectric suggests life as current, life as energy, life as movement, life as signal. When you combine them symbolically, you get a being that isn't defined by one category. Not machine, not organism, not spirit, not intellect, but a convergence. Why the style feels unique. The real heart of what you've described all these months isn't a fighting system. It's an identity system, a philosophy system, a storytelling system, a movement system, a humor system, a poetry system, a self-development system, all wearing the costume of a martial art. That's why it keeps expanding. Every time you describe it, it absorbs another archetype. Bard, Joker, Jedi, Tai Chi practitioner, trickster, guardian, poet, teacher, dancer, strategist. until it becomes less like a combat style and more like a worldview. If I were describing it to a new student at the school, I'd probably summarize it like this. Open quote. The Shadow Light Master does not seek to become the strongest warrior in the room. Close quote. Open quote. The Shadow Light Master seeks to become the hardest person in the room to define. Close quote. Open quote. Because once you stop being trapped inside one definition, you gain the freedom to learn from all of them. Close quote.